Welcome to Diamonds and Dumpster Fires, the show where we talk about finding strength when life falls apart. I'm your host, Melie, and around here, resilience isn't perfection. It's falling flat, getting back up, and maybe laughing about it later. From breakups to breakthroughs, we mix faith, neuroscience, and a little sass to help you rebuild a life that actually feels like yours. Are you ready? Let's go. Hey friends, welcome back to Diamonds and Dumpster Fires. I'm Melie, and as always, I am so grateful that you pressed play on this podcast today. If you felt a little off balance lately, that's completely understandable. There has been a lot of really sad news, and perhaps you felt yourself relentlessly reading headlines or watching reels. Maybe your personal life feels like it's shifting under your feet. Or maybe you can't even put your finger on why you're tired in your soul, but something just feels a bit off. If that's you today, this conversation is for you. Today, we're going to slow down to look for something that I like to call what is still good. Not because life isn't complicated, not because we're putting a shiny bow on hard things, and certainly not because we're into toxic positivity, because we're absolutely not on this show, but because resilience grows when we anchor ourselves to the pieces of goodness that remain. For me personally, what I've anchored in recently is just those quiet moments of calm that I get. I feel like life has been very, very hectic lately, but each day I'm able to find time to pause, read scripture, maybe even do a little knitting, and I realize that I can't take that for granted. These little moments are like life preservers for me. So let's start by naming the heaviness that we're all feeling without camping there. Some seasons make heaviness feel almost normal. We wake up, and before we've even taken a sip of our coffee, our phones are buzzing with headlines that make our stomach drop. We scroll through images of disasters, conflict, and arguments that seem impossible to resolve. Maybe you're also carrying around a lot of personal grief. Maybe you recently went through a breakup, a divorce, a health scare, have a loved one who's struggling. Or maybe you're absorbing all the quiet tension of people around you. All of that builds up layer after layer until heavy becomes the air we breathe. And if we aren't careful, that heaviness can set itself up as the baseline for everything else. It convinces us that lightness is naive, or that hope is only for people who don't understand reality. We start bracing ourselves for the next hard thing instead of noticing the steady good things that are already present. And here's something else. Pretending the pain isn't there does not make it go away. Stuffing it down or covering it with a little bit of a plastic smile usually just makes us feel worse. I mean, come on, we all do it, right? We say, I'm fine, when someone asks how you are, when deep down you just want to bare your soul and say, help me. Or maybe that's just me. But parking our hearts in despair, letting sorrow or anxiety have this permanent hold on our attention is not the answer either. Both extremes will rob us of the resilience that we've been trying so hard to grow. So what we're talking about here today is something that is much more gentle and much more honest. It's learning to hold on in a wider frame. It's saying, yes, this is hard. Yes, there are losses and uncertainties, and I wish this wasn't happening right now. But at the very same time, there are some things that are remaining steady. There are things that are beautiful, things that can be trusted. That little phrase in there, at the same time, is where resilience lives. It doesn't cancel out grief, but it keeps grief from taking up the whole stage. It gives goodness permission to stand under the same spotlight, even if its glow feels small compared to all the shadows. And if you're like me at all, and you might be if you're listening to this podcast, this can be a hard concept to really grab hold of. I have this tendency to think of things as good or bad, and it wasn't until I trained myself to see things happening at the same time that I was able to lean into this idea a little bit. So, for example, when I was going through my divorce, it was the absolute biggest heartbreak of my life. And yet, at the same time, there were still some small joys that I was able to experience. Looking back, I can remember the flowers that a family member sent to say she was thinking of me. I can remember all the audiobooks I was recording during that time that let me lose myself in a beautiful story for several hours at a time. I remember the people who checked in on me to see if I was okay. So see, we can have that grief, that pain, and at the same time can find things to hold on to. So as we keep going, I want you to carry that idea with you. We are absolutely not denying reality. I am not about that, so please do not hear that in what I'm saying. We're also, though, not surrendering to despair. We are learning how to widen the story so that the steady, trustworthy parts of our life get a voice too. And of course, you know me, I'm going to bring a little neuroscience into all of this. Our brains have what researchers call a negativity bias. How nice, right? So the reason for this is that for survival, we've been trained to notice potential threats more than potential blessings. So, think about, way back in the day, this was great when you're trying to avoid a bear or something, right? But it's less great when your phone pushes every alarming headline straight into your palm and every reel that you watch is another take on it and another take on it until you just can't even think anymore, right? Our modern life is bathed in alerts and notices and news that our ancestors never had to even imagine. We have tragedies, and I mean deep tragedies that are live streamed these days. There are comment wars on social media. Our friends are going through all kinds of crises. And then we have just our regular everyday worries on top of all of that. So it's no wonder that our nervous systems tend to hover on that high alert phase, right? But there is a way that we can calm our brains down and look for the positive instead of always looking for the negative. And even as I am saying that right now, I'm like, oh my gosh, you sound so Pollyanna. Ugh. You know me, I hate toxic positivity. But I do need to get to be a little bit more positive because I can tend to lean a little negative, right? So I am doing this with you just as much as you are, so please stick with me. We do need to get out of this negativity bias. One way we can do that is focusing on gratitude. There are studies on gratitude and savoring and doing this upward attention that show that intentionally naming good things will strengthen neural pathways for calm and hope. So it is not all fluff, it is not all Pollyanna and overly optimistic. It's actually rewiring of your brain in action. And here is a fun fact, and you can look this up if you do not believe me, but MRI studies have shown that people who practice daily gratitude have higher activity in the brain regions that are connected with learning, decision-making, and empathy. So your brain literally becomes better at holding good alongside with all the hard things you're going through. And scripture speaks into this so beautifully. Lamentations 3 says, "Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. His compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness." The writer of those words wasn't hanging out in some spa retreat with a kombucha in his hand. He was sitting in the midst of trouble in Jerusalem, looking out over loss and devastation. And this matters because his hope wasn't naive. It was actually quite fierce. He made a deliberate choice to remember God's character right in the middle of pain. And it isn't the only place that the Bible gives us this picture of steadfastness in shaky times. Psalm 46 reminds us, "God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea." Isaiah 26:3 says, "You keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you." That word stayed actually means fastened, held steady. Peace doesn't come from pretending that the storm isn't real. It comes from fastening our focus on the one who doesn't move. James 1:17 echoes the same heartbeat. "Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, who does not change like shifting shadows." And Hebrews 13:8 reminds us, "Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever." And I love that picture. The God who showed up in Scripture is the same God who shows up for us now. His faithfulness doesn't take a sabbatical when our hearts get weary and sad. His compassion never is on an off season, and we never have to worry that he'll leave us when times get tough. Even in times when everything familiar is just feeling shaky and you just don't know what's going to happen next, you can trust that you have a solid foundation of mercy. And that's why the psalmist can write in Psalm 23:6, "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life." Goodness doesn't have to chase away all the darkness in some big way to be real. It just has to be present, walking alongside us, steady and sure. When I was walking through my divorce, Psalm 34:18, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted," was a lifeline that I held on to every day. And no, I'm not saying that reciting that verse suddenly chased all the clouds away and shot glitter up into the air, but it did help me hold on and look for what God was doing in my life. So, when we talk about what's still good, part of that is just remembering that God Himself is still good. His character isn't up for grabs just because the headlines are grim. We don't question who God is just because we feel tired. His mercies really are new every single morning, and even on those mornings that begin with tears and not wanting to crawl out of our beds. So let's walk through 4 categories now where steadiness can often hide and where we can bring it to light. We can consider this section practical anchors that we might cling to when we need to find goodness. And I would encourage you, I'm going to give you 4 here. There's obviously plenty more than just 4 of these, but I would encourage you as I go through each of these to think about where you might start to find these anchors in your own life. So number 1, look for something beautiful. And I mean truly just something, it can be small, some kind of sensory gift. It could be the smell of rain. It could be the way that the morning light kind of shimmers through your bedroom window. It could be the giggle of a small child. It could be your dog's tail wagging if you happen to be someone who likes dogs. If you're like me, it might very well be that first sip of coffee in the morning. I can't think of anything better than that, to be honest. Little tiny details, though, that's what we're looking for. These little tiny details that teach your body there is still beauty in the world. Number 2, look for someone in your life who is steady. Think of people who are there for you, who stay through the hard stuff. They may not be there to solve everything for you, but they show up. This could be a mentor, a sibling, a neighbor, a church friend. Sometimes steadiness is just someone texting, thinking of you. And here is a tip. If someone came to mind when I was talking about thinking of someone who's steady in your life, consider reaching out later today and just let them know how much you appreciate them. Maybe send something like, "You've been an anchor for me, thank you," or, "Thank you for always being there for me." I think it's so important that we recognize those people who are there for us in our lives and thank them for that. Number 3 is to look for something inside of you. So this is not a new age thing, but resilience isn't only external. It's the quiet strength that is built through those battles that we go through. It's patience that you didn't even know you had. It's humor that slips through tears, and we're going to actually address humor in just a minute here as well. But it's this grit that you earned by surviving. So take inventory. What qualities do you have that have kept you afloat before? That resource still lives in you, and you can summon it up when you need to. And the last anchor that I'm going to talk about today is a restorative rhythm. So as humans, we thrive on rhythms. This could be prayer, walking, journaling, knitting, gardening, singing in the car, brewing tea. There's all kinds of rituals that we can do. But these rituals cue our nervous system that not everything is chaos. For me personally, one rhythm of life that I have found very restorative is my journaling time with coffee in the morning. I started a gratitude journal process right when you think it would make no sense to do so in the midst of my divorce, and I do this most mornings now. There's something really restoring about getting up when it's still dark outside to the smell of fresh coffee, pouring a cup. I take it over to my cozy couch with my journal, my Bible, and this beautiful fancy pen that I bought, and I just enjoy the rhythm of that moment. Now, I want to invite you to pause for a minute. So as I mentioned, I wanted you to think about each of those anchors that we just talked about, but this is the time for you in your mind, you can write it down, you can just think about it, whatever you want to do. Which one of those stands out to you? Which one of those are you going to try to bring more into your life? And as I mentioned, we are going back to humor because I think it is so important to keep humor and perspective in times that are hard. And I don't mean some kind of humor that's inappropriate or, loud even. It can be very gentle. We don't have to tell ourselves fake stories of false positivity. We don't have to plaster smiles over our heartbreak, but we can find ways to bring a little bit of gentle humor into our lives. I mean, honestly, for me, sometimes just watching cats, there's a reason cat videos are so popular. They're hilarious, right? So maybe just put one of those on. Maybe you put on a comedy show. Maybe you ask one of your friends to tell you a silly dad joke if you're into those. Sometimes the bravest thing that we can do is find a way to laugh, even if it's at ourselves. So with all of that in mind, I'd like to just settle for a moment. Let's take a slow inhale. We're going to hold for 2 and exhale gently. Will you join me in that? Inhale, hold, exhale. Now, picture the thing or the person or the rhythm that you just named. Let it rise up into your mind and just notice how your shoulders might drop a little bit as you're focusing on this good thing. And you may just want to offer up a prayer during this time too. You might just whisper something like, God, I thank you for what is still good in my life. Even when everything feels fragile, please help me to see your steady gifts. Teach me to rest in your mercy. And then just take a few moments and breathe again. So here is an easy rhythm for the week that, you might want to consider adopting. Don't think of this as homework or mandatory practice, but something that you may just want to try on and see if it fits for you. So to start out in the morning, before you start scrolling social media, name one thing that hasn't changed overnight for the worse. That could be breath in your lungs. It could be a friendship that you cherish. It could even be those coffee beans waiting to be brewed. Then when you hit the midday, we're going to do a little bit of a reset. So step outside, or if you really can't get outside at all, look outside a window. Find one sign of life that is going on that you enjoy. This could be birds. This could be clouds. This could be leaves. Maybe you just notice someone walking down the sidewalk. Whatever it is, just reset yourself and just enjoy that piece of life. And then in the evening, write out something that is still good, a still good moment for your day. You can write it down in a journal. You can put this on the notes app on your phone. You can even do a voice memo. You know what you could actually do is you could send a voice memo to a friend of a still good moment for that day, and then that friend could send you one back, kind of a little bit of accountability, community, and practicing wellness all at once. Yay, right? So these tiny practices retrain your attention away from that constant threat toward resilience. And my friend, I want you to know right now, as I'm recording this, a lot has gone on in our world that is just sad. And, we live in a world that is broken by sin, and that's not going to change on this side of heaven. So while life may not give us perfect circumstances, that doesn't mean that goodness retires just because trouble has shown up. There is always something good, a person, a view, a truth, a rhythm, just quietly holding steady, and if we look for it, we can find it. So if this episode helped you at all, would you please share it with someone who might need a gentle reminder that there is still good to be found in their story? And if you haven't yet, I would be so honored if you would subscribe so you don't miss future conversations. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I always cherish these podcast episodes, and until next week, keep looking for what's still good, and just remember, it's probably a lot closer than you think. That's a wrap on this episode of Diamonds and Dumpster Fires. If you're walking through the ashes right now, remember, you're not broken. You are becoming. Don't forget to subscribe, share with a friend who needs it, and come back next week for more faith, honesty, and a whole lot of heart. See you next time.